Well, they wrote it into the Constitution to provide for the general welfare, not as a throwaway line, as one of those core reasons that government exists. But if you look at how wages and healthcare have unfolded in America over the last few decades, you have to wonder, whose welfare are we really providing for? Let's take Congress. They make well into the six figures. Their pay hasn't gone up in a while, but their benefits have held strong. They get heavily subsidized health insurance, and they have access to doctors right down the hall. And when costs go up, the government quietly picks up most of the slack. And now let's look at someone earning minimum wage. That wage hasn't moved since 2009 either. And if your job doesn't offer health insurance, and many don't, you're left to figure it out on your own. Even with government help, getting decent care can mean skipping meals or going into debt. In between those things are millions of everyday workers, the people holding up the middle. Most have insurance through work, but over time, they've had to pay more for less. Deductibles climb, coverage shrinks, and every year, it gets a little harder to stay healthy without falling behind. So how did we get here? Wages have stayed flat, and healthcare costs have soared. And the people writing the laws insulated themselves. Slow to raise their own pay, but quick to protect their benefits. They use the rules to shield themselves from the consequences everyone else is living with. The Constitution gives Congress the power to provide for the general welfare, not just their own, not just the powerful, everyone's. And the founders knew, regardless of how they debated the details, that a republic can't survive if people lose faith in the fairness of the system. If the rules no longer feel shared, if the promises of dignity and security start to look like they were only ever meant for a few. So here's the question. If you could change one thing to rebuild that trust, would you start with wages? With healthcare? Or is the deeper issue this? We've stopped expecting government to serve the people it was built to represent. Let me know what you think, because if we don't fix this, someone else will come along and promise they can. And history tells us that doesn't always end well. Hey folks, over the next 30 days, I'm hoping that I can find 50 people who would be willing to help sustain the work that's done here. If you don't know, I put out 1 to 2 TikTok videos per day here. I also put out 1 to 2 longer form videos on YouTube, and I put out a podcast, essays, and videos on a Patreon that is not paywalled, and I have a different podcast and different essays that I put out on Substack that is also not paywalled. The reason I don't paywall these things is because I want this content to be available to anyone who needs it at any time for any reason. I think these are precarious times, and I want this to be available to anyone who needs it, not if they could pay $1 or $5 or whatever. But that does mean that I do need folks to come in and help make that gift available to everyone. I'm happy to provide the content, but I need help paying those bills. And so if you could pitch in with that, you can find that at the link that you're seeing here on screen, the links in my bio. And also, if you haven't joined the Patreon or the Substack or all that jazz, or my YouTube, you can find links to all that stuff on that website as well, including a few other things that I didn't name that you might find interesting. So if you watched this far, thank you. And if you can't come in and contribute, the content will still be here for you. The thing that's most important to me is that this isn't kept from anyone for monetary reasons. All right. Thank you for watching. Thank you for considering this, and I'll see you in the next one.